Harry Reynolds, we all know him as Butch, ran track at Ohio State back in the 1980s. He made a name for himself on the international stage, setting 2 world records in the 400-meter race and becoming a 2-time Olympic medalist. Hopes to run in the 1992 games were dashed after the governing body for track and field said Reynolds had tested positive for steroids. As a result, he lost lucrative endorsements and countless opportunities. Decades later, a dark cloud hangs over his legacy. Tomorrow night, he hopes to set the record straight. False Positive is the story of a man's battle to right or wrong.
Where does Butch rank on the list of most talented track and field athletes that you ever coached?
That's an easy question to answer. Number 1.
I got a phone call from my agent. He said, Butch, you tested positive for a steroid.
The documentary, centered on a test done in 1990 which upended Butch Reynolds' life, airs Tuesday night on ESPN.
He was suspended from competition for 2 years. He says he was clean.
It's easy to tell the truth. It's hard to tell a lie.
But most importantly, telling the story about what happened, about the false accusation, why I stood for 34 years trying to prove my innocence.
It was later widely reported that a mix-up in the lab led to the false positive. In 1992, following a federal lawsuit against the sport's governing body that conducted the test, now known as World Athletics, Reynolds won a $27 million lawsuit. How did it feel sitting there, hearing people define you, knowing this is not who I am?
Hurtful, very extremely hurtful. Very disappointing.
32 years later, he says he hasn't received a dime. The documentary, Reynolds says, also serves as a nod to his supporters.
He gives it to those people who really believed in me and who really say, you know what, this guy had an unjust, and we need to support him and this cause and getting him exonerated.
What if that never comes? As
an Olympian, as a world record holder, we put our mind to something that we're going to achieve. And me exonerating my grandfather's name, as long as I have breath, I'm going to keep fighting to get that exoneration.
Reynolds stepped onto the world stage in 1987 after setting his first world record, 44:10 in the 400-meter race at the Jesse Owens Classic. A year later, another world record, 43:29, this time in Switzerland. The Accra native earned silver and gold medals during the '88 Summer Games in Seoul, South Korea.
I'm still proud of the process, even though I had to go through what I had to go through.
I met Reynolds, who turned 60 last week, where he ran track in college, the Ohio State University. Why is it important to get this cleared up?
You know, I think it's because legacy. When I was going through a lot of turmoil, I didn't know which way I was going.
Let's take on the world for real. You know, they thought that 43.29 was something. You wait, that's what I kept saying. They ain't seen nothing yet.
I trained hard. I dedicated myself to be the best. And when it comes to morals, values, ethics, I'm all over it in a positive way. And so I had to take that energy that I had and really make it positive.
What do you know about yourself now that you didn't know before?
I always knew that I was very strong. I always knew that I was very determined. I think what I know now that I didn't know before is trust the process, be a little more patient, because it's going to work anyway. I reached out to World Athletics for comment, but have not heard from the organization. However, a court determined the sport's governing body for track and field, based in Monaco, was outside U.S. jurisdiction and wasn't required to honor the multi-million-dollar decision. Reynolds, by the way, has a new book also called False Positive. It will be released this week. Reynolds still lives in Central Ohio and spends a great deal of his time training young athletes to prepare for the sport and how to deal with adversity.